Truth-Driven Thinking number 91 on becoming a demotivational speaker.
Knowledge is the difference between love and mass murder. You can't do anything unless you care to look further. Knowledge is the difference between love and mass murder. You can't do anything unless you care to look further.
And welcome back once again to Truth-Driven Thinking, which is sponsored in part by your membership and participation in the new social learning community at truth.bloomfire.com. Someone asked me the other day if I was still doing motivational speaking. I cringed. I've never done motivational speaking. I actually despise the term, as well as the whole notion that we need more external pressure and motivation. Being a motivational speaker is something I never aspired to be, even in my new effort to subsist on the kindness of others as a non-religious minister. But that said, I do aspire to be a demotivational speaker, and today I'd like to share with you a little bit about why that is the case. First, a paragraph of disclaimers. I don't hate money. I like money. Accumulating it was once a primary goal for me. And the reversal, by the way, of that philosophy may have been a giant mistake that I'm rationalizing here. I also know that money isn't inherently good or bad. Money doesn't kill people. People kill people. I know there are warm and wonderful families involved in travel sports. Yes, we need to be realistic and earn a living. No, not everyone should study the philosophy of wealth redistribution, sit and meditate, or follow Jesus' commandments to the disciples to toss off all their worldly possessions and follow him to do cultic work. Clearly, such broad neo-stoicism could destroy lives and make the world worse off. Yes, ambition helps us to survive and thrive. Yes, ambitious hyper people create great jobs and produce much that benefits society. Note, however, that most of these ambitious types are motivated from within, intrinsically. You see, our mistake is in thinking we should push harder to motivate others from the outside, that it works, and that the outcome is happiness. Problems with extrinsic motivation. If I tell you that you need to get motivated today, what comes to mind? My guess is that your mind does not jump to meditation, philosophy, religion, meaning, compassion, reading a good book, charity, quiet time, enrichment, or a stroll through the park to smell the roses or figure out how to better feed or care for the hungry, does it? I think if we're honest about it, we must admit that when our achievement-obsessed society conventionally talks about motivation, we're talking about the pursuit of greater material wealth, status, recognition, and achievement that's heavily based upon the external assessments of others, not our intrinsic sense of well-being. It's not cool to subsist, no matter how centered, happy, and at peace it makes you. When we think or talk about achievement, we're not talking about experiencing the depth of our humanity, investing in human relationships, finding internal peace, finding profound meaning through our connection with other living things, discovering our core or finding our bliss, to use Joseph Campbell's words, or being self-aware about what intrinsically motivates us and gives us meaning in our lives. Rather, we are talking about motivating people to play a game that evolution did not well equip them to play, one that many don't really deep in their hearts even want to play, one that will likely require submitting to debt to play if you're not born into a well-off family, and one that can easily enslave them if they choose to play it. The unfortunate reality is that our quest for meaning and purpose in life often gets badly confused with our quest for material things, for status and recognition, much of which we cannot afford, and much of which results from external motivations and social forces that may not serve our happiness. Question: would you sacrifice your spouse and family, give up your mental health and edification, sacrifice the beauty of deep friendships or a social life For travel basketball? Have sleepless nights worrying about finances and payments on a second home? Or a boat? Mom's advice still applies. Perhaps upon further reflection, ambition itself should not be immune from moderation and discipline, though it seems in our culture that it is held as such often. Perhaps like many sides of our human nature, ambition is an evolved trait, like egoism, self-centeredness, self-confidence, in-group tribal bias, or being horny, which can present both a beneficial side and a darker one. Maybe it's a trait that must be tamed and transcended in order for us to truly be all that we can be as people who are complete, whole, rounded, centered, loving, feeling, compassionate, alive, and fulfilled in our potential in the truest sense, not just the conventional and social sense. Maybe the highlighting of these attributes is yet another virtue of religious systems of thought that is underrated by we who are atheists. The case and the costs. Yes, the Reverend Stephen L. Gibson has a mission to improve the well-being of humanity through the promotion of social, emotional, and intellectual growth. But no, I can't see where any part of that mission could ever involve rah-rah motivation, embracing your personal power, thinking your way out of cancer, extolling a bulimia-inducing idolatry of thinness, violating our mother's advice for moderation in all things to the extent that I can't eat what I want in reasonable proportions, or offering sadistic advice that destroying your joints by pounding them on the pavement 8 miles per day until you're suicidal is somehow vital to your well-being. Complete, of course, with the stress and dread of anticipating the next time you have to endure it. To the contrary, I'd like to share a few additional thoughts about why furthering the hype of self-help and motivation is misguided, ineffective, and even destructive, at least in the way that our culture promotes, hypes, harps on, and defines success so heavily in material terms and in terms of achievement, which, by the way, is usually measured in material terms. I will argue that through our obsessive-compulsive, neurotic, goods-chasing delusion about the nature of what motivates us and how we find meaning in life, we have sold ourselves a bill of goods. This has led to ever greater stress, perhaps even illness, and certainly to many deathbed regrets, at least until the economic music of our Ponzi and debt-driven economy stops playing, at which time we might actually regain our sanity, even if it's by accidental necessity. Could this be the silver lining to what many predict is coming economically? Until then, Americans will continue to outwork even the Japanese, who coined the term death by overwork. Our tiger moms will insist that any instrument other than piano is unacceptable, and that we must practice 34 hours per day in between pounding our joints on the road and studying hard to get into Harvard. This comes despite emerging research from people like Brian Kaplan, who, as in an audio interview that I will link here, explains that good emerging research indicates that regardless of parenting approach or degree of strictness, in the end, genetics play a much larger role in success. Kids turn out the same either way, so we should bloody relax. But instead, our fifth-generation immigrants, mutts like me, will insist that our kids should never have a moment to play with an erector set, chase butterflies, sell lemonade to merely a few kind strangers whilst reflecting on summer insects, or, God forbid, be bored and pick up a Nancy Drew mystery. No, we true Americans play travel soccer while working with a summer tutor. We spend every moment on the road and destroy marriages and organic family fun in the process. We believe our kids were born to be Olympic gymnasts. That gym owner, by the way, listens to motivational speakers. Andy saw your gold card. We drive the family further into debt. We run to music lessons after games. Oh, and we structure any remaining time with over-the-top stimulation, travel, amusement parks, or entertainment. Of course, there is a segment of society that can't afford to live this travel hockey way, but ignore them for a moment. Everyone else does. As the rich clearly get richer and unknowingly enslave the shrinking middle class with college debt, consumer debt, mortgage debt, and any other form of debt through which the indentured crew can be driven to keep up and work harder and longer while the companies wave their latest ultra-profitable gadgets in our eyes like a pedophile with candy. Does it occur to us that this entire hamster wheel, Prozac-laden existence plays right into the hands of the ultra-rich puppeteers? Gotta reinflate the debt bubble and get people spending again, they keep telling us. But do we really? Perspective. We believe we need bigger houses, bigger toys, and bigger boats. Which reminds me of the story of the poor but content South American fisherman who lives a quiet and happy life with his wife near the sea. He is approached by a banker and told that he can borrow money to buy more boats and thus hire more people to make more money, to buy a bigger house in order to someday perhaps retire and fish quietly and contently, living happily with his wife close to the sea. Ah, bankers, always trying to get a cut of everything by writing more loans. What happens to a child who has never been bored? What does that brain look like? How is that child cheated? How are we taught to be self-sufficient with no time to think, read, create, write a play, make up a new sport, discover and discuss current events with the family, catch a funny-as-hell movie together, or watch a great TED lecture online? See, I'm hardly a Luddite. Are these really the great inventors and innovators of tomorrow, who will keep America alive and sustain its role as the great leader in creativity? What are we really teaching ourselves and our kids about this fragile, short span of time we call our lives? How could we possibly benefit from any more motivational speeches that extol the virtues of this type of extrinsic motivation versus, say, the intrinsic kind that Daniel H. Pink so clearly illustrates is behind real achievement? Highly recommend seeing his book, Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. You know what matters. What are we saying and teaching ourselves about human relationships, which are clearly the most important elements of life? If you disagree, just pause for a minute and picture a world where all humans are actually robots who cannot talk or interact emotionally with you. And I know what you're thinking. You have a couple of these people you work with. But you can do your job, but you can never have a human relationship with anyone, at work or at home or anywhere. You have nobody to share your thoughts with, nobody to celebrate your victories and mourn your losses with, nobody to snuggle with, laugh with, or socialize with, no kids to bother you. How would that feel with other people? And for that, we don't need more things, more motivation, achievement, or distractions from life. We need fewer. We need to experience life. Honestly, is our behavior and motivational mindset teaching and affirming what we value most? Our connectedness? Our social time in the village? Or do we favor emails, toys we don't have time to use, cottages that sit empty, and more keys and responsibilities to more locks and obligations than we could ever possibly use? The true danger. The last 100 years of industrial revolution have brought great things. The time since Gutenberg's printing press in the 15th century set the stage for these amazing advances. The transition from hunter-gatherer, in a world whose entire population numbered only in the thousands of people, to city dwellers with televisions whose lives play out on top of human anthills, occurred all just before that printing press or electricity was invented. And before all of that was over 99.9% of history. These times are new. They're very new. Blind ambition and 24/7 stimulation are also very new. They're unprecedented, and they present amazing advances and opportunities. But our nature means they present pitfalls and dangers. And I can think of no pitfall greater than that of a wasted day, a wasted hour, or certainly a wasted life spent chasing a game deep into the matrix, a false game at that. As if you've landed a starring role in the Truman Show but won't ever realize it. It's your life. If you are internally motivated to run 150 miles an hour with your hair on fire, collecting things and running marathons and beating people at many games, even if you then give back 5 or 20%, I don't care. Knock yourself out. I'm not against you. In fact, if you are intrinsically motivated, I am all for you and help you celebrate that. That's your nature, your bliss, and that is great. But don't assume everyone should be like you or could be so driven. For these reasons, I'm rethinking my own participation in this culture of material success. I, for one, am plenty full of extrinsic pressure, self-help, motivational speeches, and plain old empty nonsense. Yes, there is a time and a place for inspiration, and sometimes a slight push from the external world can help you discover an intrinsic spark that turns to a flame. But that's more Hollywood than reality. Too many other forces and variables are at play, and the reality is that camel's back was going to break, regardless of which straw was added last. In other words, you would have gone into that direction of your bliss anyway. And if you are an intrinsically motivated, hyper-ambitious contributor to society to begin with, you don't need external motivation anyway. It may be a quick and fun caffeine-like jolt, but it's more entertainment than it is life-changing. The world is full of enough motivational speakers. I, for one, will not join their ranks. Extrinsic motivation is mostly an empty promise that does not last and rarely leads to the happiness or contentedness that we seek. Often it misleads us or serves the interests of those trying to motivate us to buy books, reinflate the bubble, get our vote, or take out the loan. So for the most part, I say, screw external motivation. And by that I mean the motivation imposed upon you and others, or by others I should say, and generally worshipped without critical scrutiny as being a good thing. To that end, motivational speakers are too often the symbol of the hype and overselling of that which has already been oversold in our culture, and on which the return is not all that it's cracked up to be. We are already far too motivated in this material and accomplishments sense. No, we can't be careless and we can't take big risks in uncertain financial times, but we can reprioritize our spending, our actions, our intentions, and our time. We can stop with the obsession with achievement in Western culture. Fat people, monks, quiet neighbors who work factory jobs, and cerebral geeks who emerge only on solstices are not only people, who incidentally should be admired and honored for surviving and thriving amidst life challenges like everybody else, but they might just win the real game in life. The game of joy, enlightenment, beauty, depth of experience, compassion, and love. That wraps up our guest-free monologue here on Truth-Driven Thinking, where we don't make claims about having any unique access to truth. No, it's much about the journey here. It's about setting out to find ever-elusive truth, however difficult that may be. You can support this podcast and our mission and our usual guests by joining our social learning community at truth.bloomfire.com, where you can participate in this unique social video intensive peer learning experience. Way more than a forum, it's a learning community, a safe and intellectually honest environment where grandma doesn't have to see your Facebook posts on topics of sex, God, politics, or Social Security. And while I'm thinking of it, I've issued a call for deconversion stories for the Bloomfire. If you're willing to share and talk about some of your experiences with changed religion or merely changing schools of thought or philosophy on something major that's impacted your life, I'd like to hear about that, what it was, how you got there, and how it changed your life, and any social ramifications of that. My email is S. Gibson, Gibson, S. Gibson at truthdriventhinking.com. Or better yet, just join the Bloomfire directly at truth.bloomfire.com. Also, please find the Stephen L. Gibson's Truth Driven Thinking page on Facebook. I would love to see you there. All of that said, I thank you for being here today. We'll see you soon with more baby steps along this road to ever-elusive truth. I'm Stephen L. Gibson. Make it a great day.
I can't fathom dealing with you anymore. Now,